your first trip together. Do you remember that? And where did you guys go? And talk about that a little bit. And did you enjoy that experience?
Yeah, our first trip together was May of 2011. Jen had traveled around the world a couple of times, or been to a few countries, and I had not. I didn't have a passport at the time, so that was one of the things that she was pretty adamant about me getting one, and then let's go see the world, and kind of set the wheels in motion. And we went to Scotland. We did Scotland and Ireland, and Northern Ireland in that trip. Scotland was the first country that I got to experience, and I mean, it made us fall in love with the country. We loved it so much we went and got married there the next year.
Wow. What was so great about Scotland?
You know, we just loved the culture, loved the people. We spent most of our time in the Highlands, and we just kind of fell in love with it. And what it really, we just don't have a whole lot of intermediate family between the two of us. So I proposed to her when we were in Ireland on the second half of that trip. So I'd been planning to propose to her. I think we had the trip booked for like 9 or 10 months, and so I was like, all right, she and I have been dating for a couple of years. She's the one. I'm gonna ask her to marry me. And my family has a pretty deep history in a place called Buncrana of Ireland, and so we have a family castle out there. And it was like the idea was to be by the family castle and propose to her there. And when we were in Scotland, it was like everywhere I looked, I was like, should it be here? Should I even wait? Do I need to wait? And I did wait, and ended up asking her to marry me in Ireland. But we just again loved being in Scotland. Decided to, you know what, let's go have a small ceremony and go have an outdoor wedding in the Highlands. And we did, May of 2012.
Jin, did you see that coming? Was it something that you knew was going to happen?
No, not at all. Not at all. And I actually kind of thought it was an asshole move because when somebody gets down on their knee, like everybody immediately starts cheering and clapping, like they assume you're going to say yes. And it really kind of puts you on the spot, and you kind of have to say yes. Otherwise everybody's like, that girl's a bitch. You know what I mean? I'm like, I didn't even have to think about it. Like I have to say yes because I'm on the spot. I mean, obviously, afterwards I think I went and got an Irish coffee, which is like half whiskey. I'm like, I need a drink. It just needed some time to marinate, but I was like, how dare you put me on the spot? What an asshole.
Was there a lot of people there?
Maybe 20 or 30, but
that's a lot.
Everybody immediately like starts clapping.
I took her off to the side though. Like I took her away from everybody. Like nobody knew that I was going to be doing it. I tried to do it on the cool, but as soon as I got down on the knee, all of a sudden you could hear people cheering and clapping. I was like, motherfuckers, y'all weren't supposed to see this. But yeah, good times.
What an asshole.
Jin, when you found out that Douglas didn't have a passport and you've already been traveling for a while, was it kind of weird to you? Because it seemed like I heard some statistic about Americans that only like a low percentage of Americans have passports actually.
Yeah, that's a crazy.
Yeah, I was definitely like, look, you gotta get a passport. We gotta go. And to be honest, I hadn't been traveling very long. I'd been to like 3 or 4 countries by this point. But it was a really amazing experience. Like I grew up pretty poor, so we didn't get to travel or take family vacations. And so as soon as I finished college, I started traveling and getting to taste that. So I really enjoyed it. So as soon as we got together, I was like, look, you got to do something about this. We got to go.
Yeah, the couple of countries that she had been to previously though was Fiji twice and Kenya, and it was and St. Kitts, and it's like, wow, you didn't just go to Mexico and go to Cozumel. Like you went and did some really awesome stuff, and like all the photos that she showed me. But I'd wanted to travel. I grew up really with not a lot of money either, not a lot of wealth, and so traveling throughout the states, we did a lot as a kid, but never anything outside of just visiting like border towns in Mexico, and when you didn't need a passport, and so yeah, it's one of the best decisions I've ever made. In fact, I've got less than a year left before I have to renew my passport. So the 10 years is coming up, and I think we're at 21 countries now total. And
it must allow you guys to bond more, right? The way you guys kind of grew up, it seems like that's something that allows you guys to be closer and kind of have more of an interest in traveling because of that. You know, not really traveling when you're young outside of the country, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that we both grew up in the manner that we did, I think it has helped strengthen that bond. Um, and then yeah, and all the traveling we do, because it turned into, now we climb mountains across the world, and so that's a very bonding experience. It's a lot of time to just be there and think, and it's just she and I. Sometimes we'll depend on what mountain range we're in, we may have a guide, so it could be three of us, but typically it's just Jin and I and our camping gear and trekking poles, and yeah, so the bonding is definitely a part of at least our type of traveling. Yeah, to me.
Are you guys you guys say you guys have your camping gear, you're hiking. You ever thought about the Summit? So I was talking to Ruben Payan Jr. He's the strength and conditioning coach for like Zhang Wei Li and a lot of the Chinese fighters in the UFC, and he's done all 7. And I talked to he's like in that exclusive club. Have you guys ever thought about that?
I have.
We've talked about it. We have talked about the 7 summits. She works with a physician that he's done. How many has he done? Just did his 3rd?
Like he's done 3 or 4.
3 or 4 of them, and it has been one of those things. But then again, when it comes down to like Everest, I don't want to do it.
But to be honest, mountaineering is like, it's not a cheap hobby. Like these excursions to go climb mountains are pretty expensive, and you have to do it pretty regularly. It's not like there's mountains that we can go just climb up on the weekend in Texas. It takes a lot of practice, to get good at it. And so I'm not sure if it's something that will ever be experienced enough to attempt something like Everest. But it would be cool. Not to mention that, it's like $100,000 an attempt or something just to try Everest. And so, that's not really just pocket change. So mountaineering is definitely kind of a rich man's hobby, for sure.
Oh, definitely. I didn't even know that it cost that much. That's pretty insane. That's like $1 million to climb all the mountains, basically.
Yeah, that's just like an attempt. That's not even guaranteed that you summit. And it's like a 2-3 month process, because you have to go out there and spend so much time acclimating at each different camp. It's kind of a very, very complex thing. And like all of those excursions, you want to have good guides. And so when you start paying for these guide services, it starts getting pretty pricey. And a lot of them are 2 and 3 week long excursions, because there's a very narrow window to make summit. And so sometimes you're just out there waiting on the weather conditions to be right before you start your summit attempt. So it's kind of a pretty involved process.
So which mountains have you climbed so far?
So several. We've spent a lot of time in the Andes, in Peru, Ecuador, and now Bolivia. Bolivia was the most recent trip, and then we did the highest point in the UK, which was Ben Nevis in Scotland, and we've gone through the Swiss, Italian, and French Alps.
We did.
What else?
We did the Tongariro Alpine Crossing in New Zealand.
The Tongariro Alpine Crossing in New Zealand. Yep, that was a really beautiful one. I think that's it as far as our mountain ranges go. We've been a lot of places, and not everybody has these magnificent mountain areas. But yes, specifically, most of our time climbing has been in the Andes.
So when you guys go up there, you guys are not like renting out Airbnbs. You guys are literally with the tent, camping, not luxurious, not those rumors that you hear about Bear Grylls flying out in a helicopter, right?
No, we're making it as cheap as possible. Not in the sense of like getting the cheapest guide and things like that, but we like to kind of be in the uncomfortable spots.
Yeah, and I mean, we just like, people kind of always assume that you have to have a ton of money to travel, but you can really get it done, fairly affordably. If you just do a little research and, we're okay being a little bit uncomfortable. We're okay roughing it a little bit. So, you know, like when we went to Norway, I think we used credit card points for our flights, and then we packed all our own gear. And I mean, it sucked because we were out in the wilderness for multiple days, and so we had to carry all our own food and water. And so everybody's walking around with day packs, and we have these like 40-pound packs. So I mean, that makes it a little bit harder, but we were pretty much self-sufficient for that whole week, and you know, just carried all our own gear. And so, you know, I think maybe we spent $250-300 on like dehydrated meals that we carried, and you know, that's really all our cost for the week was just those dehydrated meals that we had to pay for. And so then we're just hiking every day, and yeah, I mean, it's fairly cheap. You know, we're spending, you know, $20-30 a day technically, you know, for our meals because they were already pre-purchased.
Yeah, and to add to the mountain ranges we've done, I can't believe I didn't even mention going through Iceland and Norway, which were some of my favorite landscape, favorite times, favorite mountains that I've climbed across the world are in those two countries specifically. I don't know how I missed those. Yeah.
What is the craziest moments of your hiking trips, or even just your vacations and, you know, your travels? Like, you must have ran into some weird people throughout those trips in those mountains. Yeah,
you know, usually when we pick a place, we try to pick when it's shoulder season instead of like the higher season. So a lot of times when we're out in the wilderness, we may not come across many people at all, which is great. But if one of our campsites happens to be, you know, a little bit more of a popular campsite, there are times when we've interacted with other people. But by the time we get to camp, by the time we set up our tent, we make dinner after trekking for, you know, 8 hours or maybe 10 hours that day, it's exhausting. And it's like, we don't have any energy other than maybe have a little bit of wine and go to sleep and crack of dawn, get right back out there. There definitely been some oh shit moments.
Oh, you know, we decided to do a trek called like Fimmvörðuháls or something. Anyway, in Iceland. And so the start of a trek is at like a really popular waterfall. So we camped out there, and then we decided to get up early, pack up, and just hit the trail. And there wasn't anybody at like the warden hut to check in with. And so we didn't, but that's kind of a big thing that you always check with them and check the weather. But like I said, we got up so early, nobody was there yet. So we just hit the trail. And maybe a couple of hours in, you know, we make it out to like a glacier, and it starts snowing. Like visibility is like just a couple of feet. The winds start picking up like super, super high.
Yeah, we having gusts of like 60 miles an hour. And we noticed there was nobody else out there on these mountains. We're like, this is
supposed to be a really popular trail.
Yeah, what's going on here?
And then we get to like, you know, this really exposed ridge where there's just like chains that you hang on to walk around. And then plus we have our packs that are like 35 pounds with our tent and all our stuff in it. And then, you know, you have these crazy gusts, just like blew Doug. Oh, like Doug's a big person, you know what I mean? But it was enough to like blow him completely off of his feet a couple of times.
Yep.
Anyways, we end up trekking like 18 miles that day, and we finally make it to our camp, and there's like signs posted everywhere, like, please be advised,
no trekking, do not trek on this path.
The weather's supposed to be so bad, you know, we advise everybody to cancel their trekking plans if you're going to be on this trail. And we were like,
and we check in with the warden because we're getting our spot to make camp. And he slides over that piece of paper to make sure that we were aware of it. And we were like, oh, we just came off that pass. We've been trekking that all day. And it made sense to us at that time on why nobody was out there. But when we told him that we had been there, his eyes got like really big. And he's like, you guys are lucky to be alive. And even, like I said, a couple of oh shit moments that was on that trek. There's a photo that Jim took of me as we're going across one of the glaciers, and it's gray. It's just gray from the sun, from the clouds, the snow, and you just see me with my orange backpack cover kind of illuminated in there. It's a really cool picture. But that was a moment where it was like, we can't get too far away from each other because we may lose each other. But we had our GPS we knew where on the map we should go, and on that part of the trek, like there were pretty large, maybe like anywhere between 3 meters and 4 meters tall of like poles that had been put into the ground that had been painted. I forgot what color, maybe a yellow or a blue. So even though visibility was really bad, like you could see where that next pole was because they were every 20 or 30 meters. Yeah. You need to look what direction to look in. Yeah. Good times.
Yeah, that is some good times, And any like animal encounters in those mountains, or is it just so the conditions are so harsh there is no animals out there?
Not too many like crazy stories as far as that goes. We've seen some like we saw a herd of reindeer one morning after packing our stuff up and starting the day's trek, and that was in Norway. And then in Bolivia we saw what was the name of that, like kind of like a ram? Or
we saw vicuña, guanaco. We haven't really seen any predators.
No predators. Yeah.
The places we've been, I don't think at the altitude where we are, there's a ton of predators. But we really haven't camped anywhere where they had bears or anything like that, mountain lions. So
yeah, that is one thing when researching the area. That is one thing that we've got to look for, is what kind of predators are out there. And so like Norway, wolves used to be an issue, especially in this part of Norway called Jotunheimen National Park. But wolves have receded from that area so much, like they're far and few between. But yeah, that is something we definitely have to look into.
What about villages or just, locals? Did you guys get in in contact with like villages, like say like you're hiking, not like at the top, but on your way up, do you guys run into small little pockets of people out there?
I would say more so probably in the Andes, but not so much really like in New Zealand or in the Alps or anything like that.
Yeah, because those, like a lot of the places we go are national parks, and so you don't have a lot of people living in those areas. But like Jen said, with the Andes, because there is a native people still all throughout there. Yeah, you come across small communities or little houses with a small family in it, or even a large family, and we've never had any like poor interactions or anything like that. Like we've been offered special beer that they do out there. We were in Jordan one time and we came across some Bedouin women who we had morning tea with and sat down with them and had a little bit of conversation. Like the Bedouin woman specifically asked if I'm a Green Bay Packer fan. And I was like, well, how did you know about them? And apparently she'd come across a traveler who had a Green Bay Packers hat and had given her the hat. So all the interactions with people, yeah, it's occasional. And it's always been pleasant. It's always been one of those like, all right, let's talk with this person and see what kind of commonalities that we have together.
Wow, the Green Bay Packers in Jordan. That's just odd, right?
Yeah,
when I was in Kenya, I came across a kid that had a Dallas Cowboy shirt, and I guess I had been told that like a lot of times whenever there's a big like championship game or whatever, they print shirts for both teams, and then the team that doesn't win, they end up donating a lot of those things to like third world countries, and so chances are, it may have been a shirt or something that was donated, but I just remember coming across a kid and he was wearing a Dallas Cowboy shirt, and I was like, and it was in a very rural area. It wasn't like in a big city. So I was like, I don't know how this kid got this shirt.
Kenya, were you out there in the bush? What were you looking for when you were traveling there?
I went with a church actually, and it was a mission trip, and we worked with like AIDS orphans for a week. That they were, it was like during their school break. And so a lot of them didn't have anything to do during the day. And a lot of them, the government subsidized for them to live with extended family, even though it's not necessarily a good situation. Like, the extended family can't necessarily afford them. They don't really have the room. They may not have the time to dedicate to them, but their parents have passed away from the AIDS virus. And some of them themselves are HIV positive. And so during that school break, we just kind of come in and we set up like kind of like a camp for them to spend the week at, just to kind of get away from their living situation while they're not in school. And so we did that for like a week. And then our last 2 or 3 days there, we flew down to the Masai Mara and went on safari a couple of times. And so got to see the Great Migration of the wildebeest, which is like the last great migration of land mammals. I mean, it's like just like the Lion King. It's pretty crazy. Like there's millions of wildebeest like everywhere. And it's kind of funny how accurate the Lion King is. You know,
she saw baboons holding baby lions over rock formations.
like all of the names, like Simba is actually Swahili for lion, Rafiki is Swahili for friend. Like all of their names are like Swahili words. You know, I have a picture of the horizon and the sunset with an acacia tree, and it's like identical to the scene in the movie. Like it's pretty funny how accurate they actually were with that movie.
When you go to a new location and there's expectations, right? Have you ever been somewhere where you're kind of, it was almost like, oh man, this is not like what the pictures look like, you know, this is not what I expected of this place.
Egypt.
I mean, to be fair, like obviously the antiquities are incredible, and you know, that was incredible to see, but it was, you know, I get that it's a third world country, but it was just a total dump. Like there's trash everywhere. There's like piles and piles of garbage, and people are just like eating and then they just toss their trash in the street. Like it is everywhere, and like animal droppings everywhere. Like it stunk. It was like probably one of the dirtiest, dingiest places I've ever been.
Like one of the worst things like that will be in my mind forever is we're at the Giza Plateau, and we are walking around the Great Pyramid, and we look over and we're like, okay, we're behind the Sphinx. So I start walking over towards the Sphinx and go look at that, and right in between those two, there was you could see that there was something in the ground, like someone had dug in the ground. I was like, oh man, maybe they're excavating. Let's go check it out. And by the time we got over there, I was like, oh no, that's like a 30-meter pit that's completely full of just garbage and trash that people are just tossing stuff in there. And it's like, that was really disheartening that, you know, there's not regulation to help with that. There's not
you know, there's signs like, please don't climb on the pyramids. People are climbing all over the pyramids, like hundreds of people.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of the sites, like, you know, have graffiti all over them. There's broken bottles all over the place, like in the sites, like the ancient sites that you're walking through. So there's really just a lack of respect for, you know, preserving the antiquities and, you know, for others to see and just to preserve for future generations.
Yeah. So having the moments of seeing those and being around it and feeling that energy of the antiquities was amazing. But then at the same time, you have that little bit of a sour taste left in your mouth because the garbage is everywhere. The filth is just everywhere.
Wow, I didn't even know that. I've heard, you know, here and there that it is kind of, you know, when you go to the pyramids, it's not like what you would expect, like you said. But yeah, like garbage being everywhere. Like you said, you would think that they would take care of it because it's like what one of the 7 wonders of the world. You know, it's like UNESCO, right? UNESCO, isn't it a protected site? I would think like they would be doing something with that, but I guess not. You know. South America, your last trip was to Bolivia. That's South America or Central America?
That's South America.
Okay, South America, Bolivia. What other countries in South America?
We've been to Peru twice and Ecuador, and then
okay.
Bolivia.
Machu Picchu.
Yeah, that was actually the first time we went down to South America in 2013. We did Machu Picchu. We did the Inca Trail, like a 4 or 5 day trek from a starting point, and so that was again camping and being in the wilderness and being on the Inca Trail and trekking all day, and that was great because we went with a really good guide and group. They had us to where the night before we reached Machu Picchu, we made camp to where at dawn we could see the sun rise into the valley where Machu Picchu is, and then walk down into Machu Picchu before
anybody else would say.
Yeah, before the massive flood of tourists from
The
the
day trip
surrounding,
people.
from the surrounding cities are bussed in or trained in or boated in.
Boated in? Really?
There's a river. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. What is that? What's that river called? Do you remember?
Mm-mm.
I don't remember off the top of my head either. But yeah, people take river boats and it's very, very popular site. So they
I think that there's a limit on like 2,500 permits a day, but that's still 2,500 people is quite a bit. To do the actual trail, I think they only allow 500 permits a day, including employees who are working with each tour guide. Like you're required to use a tour guide to trek the Inca Trail. And then, like I said, there's 2,500 day passes given for Machu Picchu a day.
When you got there, what did you think?
It was incredible.
Yeah.
And then like we had maybe like 15 minutes in there, and then we had to leave and turn around and come back in through the gate with like all the rest of the people that had the day passes. And that like pretty quickly we were ready to go. Like once it starts getting so packed where you're just like elbow to elbow and people, shoving their way through, it's just like, all right, it's time to go.
Yeah, but Machu Picchu was badass. Yeah, it was a really because they still don't know exactly how old it is or who built it specifically. Like they've got really good ideas, but there's a lot of questions. And I mean, if you watch Ancient Aliens, then
Yeah. Who hasn't seen it yet?
That's right.
You get lost in that show.
Yeah.
What about the Nazca Lines? Did you guys go check that out?
No,
see that.
didn't even the second time that we went back to Peru, we went back to the same mountainous area of Cusco, and the Nazca Lines are actually further south of even Lima. Yeah, and we've been to Lima, but we haven't made it further south than Lima.
We did go to a museum where they have the Baraka Skulls, which I guess was kind of a thing that they talked about on. Did we see that on Ancient Aliens?
Yeah,
and we were like, hey, let's go check that
they're
out.
like elongated skulls that they look like alien skulls. And
Yeah.
So they were at the museum there in Cusco, and I think those were found in Nashville, weren't they? Is that right?
I don't know.
I don't remember that either. But seeing those up close, and I was like, But from what they explained as how they happened is a lot like I forget which African tribe it is, but they wear the rings on their neck and they stretch their necks out.
So they would wrap their heads to like elongate the skulls or whatever. Or they could just be aliens.
Or they could be aliens. I mean, whatever you want to believe.
Is it possible?
Yeah. Now we need that guy with the hair come out in the show and tell us
That's
like
right.
why. Yeah, that is a trip. Like that the Machu Picchu and the Nazca Lines and then the elongated skulls. All of that is just fuels the people that believe in aliens like deeply 100%. That fuels them. But now the terrain. You got South America, you got Europe. It's just what's harder to climb? What's harder to like traverse?
Well, I would say that the Andes have been only because of the elevation. Mountains can be difficult no matter where you are. They are difficult. It takes a certain level of fitness, especially with the type of treks that we're doing. But it's much easier. Easier is the wrong word. It's much more manageable to trek these mountains and summit these mountains when the elevation is peaking out around 4,000 or 5,000 feet versus 17,000 feet or 19,000 feet. We did a mountain in Ecuador in 2015 called Cotopaxi, maybe 2014, and it's just over 19,000 feet. And Jen and I we hadn't done anything that crazy yet, and we knew that we were both athletes. We were like, we're in great shape. We can do this. We arrived in Quito. Quito's the main city, and we were only there for 2 days before we made it out to where we're going to be doing that trek. And that trek starts around 1 or 2 a.m. in the morning, and so that you can get onto the glacier and make it to summit before dawn, or see this the surrounding valley and at dawn and start coming down. And that one chewed us up and spit us out, man. Like that one.
That was rough.
That was at the time was like that was the most difficult thing I've ever done in my entire life. And I think we got to 17,000 feet right there, and that was kind of our cap. So we still had another 2,000 feet before, and the sun was already starting to come up. But so elevation is no joke. Like that's the one. That's the one that's the
and it doesn't
major
discriminate.
difference.
It doesn't really matter how great a shape you're in. Like altitude sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess you got to be in mountain shape. I heard that's difficult to get into.
The acclimation process is just a slow process. It's just taking it slow, being out there for numerous days, and
being physically active while you're out there.
I mean, being in shape helps, but it doesn't help with how your body acclimates to the altitude, and it just makes the actual like walking, easier. But like actually this last time in Bolivia, I noticed we had a guide and he made me go so slow. And like when I get going, like I'm a fast walker, like I just go. And like he purposely got in front of me and made me just like barely step. But then I noticed I never had any issues with altitude. And he was like, it's super important. He's like, people just want to go. He goes, but the slower you go, the more time that you give your body to acclimate. And, that was something that I think really helped this time because I didn't have any altitude sickness issues at all. I did take some Diamox, which is like a medication to help with it. But, I never had headaches or like that's even the first sign of like starting to get altitude issues. There's headaches. And I never had any headaches. And it was just, I think it was just him forcing me to go like baby steps. Like it was just so slow going. I was like, oh my God, I just want to get to the top. But it's part of it, just taking it slow and acclimating.
There is a benefit of going to the Andes, specifically those three countries we've been to, is that coca tea, coca leaves, coca candy, they're very easily purchased, and especially the coca tea and the coca leaves, they help you with acclimating quicker and combating altitude sickness and things like that. So like getting off the plane, immediately getting to, where we're staying in the city for that night, they'll always have some coca tea available. And then you go find like a local witch or a native and get a bag of coca leaves. And so then you can chew on the coca leaves, day in and day out, helping yourself combat that. Because I don't know exactly where my cap is on where I have to be before I need to start taking some sort of medication like a Diamox, because we've made it up to 17,000 multiple times now, and I still have not had elevation sickness. I don't know where my cap is, and I attribute a lot of it to making sure I'm hydrated and drink plenty of water, but having plenty of coca tea and always chewing on coca leaves.
So you just got a pouch full of coca leaves and you just piled it chewing coca leaves.
Dude, if you see pictures of me like that, like that's a big old mouthful of coca leaves.
So in Peru, Ecuador, Bolivia, and what's the fourth country? There's
Colombia.
There's 4 countries where coca leaves are part of the indigenous culture, and so it's legal. But don't take it anywhere, outside of those 4 countries.
Yeah, they'll fuck you up.
Big no-no.
Yeah, they'll fuck you up.
There's like
it's
police dogs everywhere sniffing all your luggage.
I'm like, man, this stuff is so good.
But don't try it. Don't try to take it out of the country.
No, like just like on the layover from Bolivia home, we had to go through Peru and then we went through Mexico City before going to DFW. And when we got into Mexico City, every single person had their persons and their luggage
sniffed.
What you had checked in, you had to take out and recheck it in, but they had a drug dog sniffing every single person. And like the first time that we went to Peru, we had on the way home coming out of Cusco, we had a layover in Lima for just 5 or 6 hours, but we were there before the gate opened, before the ticketing counter had opened. And so we had hours just kind of sit there and just kind of observe everything going on. And there's like a white hippie kid who a drug dog came sniffing him and hit. And he got snatched up by the police, and we saw him get taken into a room, and we were there for a few more hours, and he never came out. And I was like, that's locked up and abroad. I was like, you don't want that shit.
Yeah, that's a TV show right there. If he's a hippie kid, he looks like a hippie kid. He just becomes a target, right?
Exactly. That's why I said, why would you look like that? And then whatever you're doing, hey, you know what? Maybe he didn't have anything, and he got let go, and it's a misunderstanding.
Guilty.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I mean, hell, Jin got hemmed up by TSA. She spent a fight camp in Iceland in 2017, and a couple of weeks up there. And on her way back, she had forgotten that she had some blueberries and avocado and stuff. And TSA pulled her aside, took her into a private room, and was like, "Where did these come from?" And like they
I
were
was stuck back there for for a while. Like I was starting to get worried about making my connection. Like I knew it wasn't going to be a big deal. Like I just forgot that I had fresh fruits and vegetables that were from a foreign country when I landed at JFK. But it's like they kept me back there so long, and I was like, shit, I'm about to miss my connecting flight to make it back to Dallas. Like, can we get this over with? And they were like, okay, you can't bring fruits and vegetables, that are fresh from another country. And I'm like, I know, I just forgot. I'm cutting weight. Like, I just wanted to have something that I could munch on. And so they just made me like throw everything away and then, sent me on my way or whatever. But they were not.
That's weird. Like, it's fruits and vegetables. Come on, just throw it away and let you go on your way. It's not like you're hiding something in the fruits and vegetables.
No, I'm like, it's crazy.
Now, what was gonna go back to? You were saying, witches. Like, how many witches have you met throughout your travels?
Well, especially the indigenous cultures. They still have medicine men and shamans and shamans.
And specifically like Bolivia, like the area we were staying at, it's kind of like a tourist attraction. The witches market was very close to where we were staying, and so we kind of just walked over just to see. Lots of indigenous women sell the coca leaves, and but Douglas actually just happened to find them in the witches market. But there was like dried llama fetuses and all kinds of like just like potions for everything. It was interesting to look at, but
so yeah,
those are always cool to look at,
Yeah, just interesting to see.
A couple of witches in Iceland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. What's the difference?
Some pagans.
Just pagans. It probably not too much, because when I say witches, it's usually based off heathenry or paganism. And some of them have beliefs in like some of their older gods, like some like the Nordic cultures would, believe in Odin and Thor and Freya, and there's the list goes on there for the Norse mythology.
A lot of them really just kind of have a belief with like a connection to the earth.
And that's kind of it's not like connection between the different cultures across the world, is that belief in the paganism. It's really more about nature. And so like, in South America, Pachamama is a deity that you respect.
She's Mother Earth.
She's the Mother Earth. And every time you go, you do anything, you go on a trek, you do anything, especially like coca leaves. If you're gonna choose some, you pick out the best coca leaves and you put them on Mother Earth for Pachamama, so that she gives you, a good day. And because apparently Pachamama, the deity herself, can be very very cruel as well. And so like this last trip, they're like, yeah, we firmly believe in Pachamama, and if we don't have our sacrifices for her and things like that, like she will come, and if she will sacrifice us, And
they have a big like yearly event where everybody goes and brings like offerings or whatever to Pachamama on the mountain, and that's supposed to like keep her happy for the year, so that there's not a lot of like mountaineering accidents and that sort of thing. It's still a pretty strong like cultural belief for them.
I'm knees deep in the Vikings, right? I'm like on season 4 or 5, 4 I think, and I'm learning a lot. I'm learning a lot about the Norsemen.
So yeah, there's a lot of we were very deep into it as well. I think we're in season 5 right now. We started rewatching it, and we're caught up and now watching the newer episodes we hadn't seen before. But as far as the accuracies go on how they believe, and it's fairly accurate. Like they're doing a really substantial job. Like I got really big into Norse mythology a few years ago, and now I'm tatted up with runes and Icelandic seagulls, and like I'm very infatuated with it. And I really like, I really have a like for the Vikings and even The Last Kingdom. Have you seen The Last Kingdom on Netflix?
That one's good too.
That's another really good one it's got a lot of historical accuracies involving England before it was England, right before it was England, and all the Norsemen, the Saxons,
and the Danes.
with the Danes and the Norse, and it's another really, really good series.
Yeah, it's interesting. I love that stuff. Did you have to lick someone's hand?
No.
Ha! Nope.
Is that real? Is that accurate?
I don't know about that. It could be with like a seer to try to get your fortune or the future told, but I don't know. I don't know that much.
I was like, those actors had to lick someone's hand. It's just like, man, that's acting right there.
They better be making that big money for that one.
Definitely. When you're buying the coca leaves in the market, is there like there must be different people selling different coca leaves. So it's like, how do you know who has the best coca leaves? Are they like drug dealers out there? They're like, oh, I got the best coca leaves. This is, 99% coca.
It's all the same.
Yeah. So like you can pick up a bag and like after the first time being in Peru and having coca leaves available, our guide at that time, his name is Edwin Shusi, and he's still a good friend of mine. Like I've sent multiple people throughout the mixed martial arts world to him, doing Machu Picchu, doing Vinicunca Rainbow Mountain and Alzungate. Like Alima McFarland was one of my homies that she's like, I'm in Peru. I was like, hey, if you want to do this, I was like, hit up my boy Eddie. And she's one of them. And Julia Avila, her and her husband, she went down there. But anyways, Eddie told me, he's like, whenever you're doing the coca leaves, whenever you're looking at them, fill the bag. And if the leaves are just very dry, he's like, those are too old. And so usually you want leaves that have a little bit of like
suppleness.
Yeah, suppleness to them.
All right. Well, that's good to know. If I ever go down there and want to buy some coca leaves, right? I just won't leave them in my pocket at the airport. That's all it is.
You can't be getting those shitty coca leaves.
Yeah. Now, what about, the ayahuasca? That's something that always interests me and is pretty deep into the culture down there. Did you guys see anything, or like, did you see any shamans kind of promoting that?
A couple of places,
like tourist places, they'll offer like ayahuasca trips. Most of that's done down in the Amazon, and we were pretty much up in the mountains, so you have to travel down to the Amazon basin to do a lot of that. So, I mean, you see it advertised everywhere. Like all the tour agencies will offer ayahuasca trips, but we haven't done that.
That's a trip, right? Like they're offering drug trips. Like that's not something you would see like normally anywhere in the world, just that place, right? But it's part of their culture, so you gotta just respect. And it must help people because a lot of people promote it outside the countries.
A lot of people say it helps, but also like we always go to climb mountains, and going down to the Amazon basin, that requires like a number of different immunizations and like anti-malarials, and so it's really not a last minute thing that you should kind of decide to do, because like I know a lot of places you are required to have like yellow fever vaccines and stuff if you're going to go down to the Amazon, so probably best to plan ahead of time for that.
Mm-hmm.
What's in the future for you guys? The countries that you guys want to go, or the mountains that you want to climb?
I am like, Mongolia is like huge for me.
Yes, that's at the top of our list right now, is Mongolia.
Mongolia and Nepal, but both of those I feel like really need maybe about a month, because the countries are so big and vast and the infrastructure isn't that great. Like it's not easy to just zip around and get around. So you really need a lot of time to be able to travel and get especially like Mongolia. Mongolia is huge, but there's something incredible to see like in every different region. Like in the West, you have the Kazakhs and the golden eagle hunters. And then, in the North, you have your indigenous people, the Sartans, I think.
I believe that's how it's
that, are the nomadic reindeer herdsmen. And then, you have the Gobi Desert in the South, and the Central Plains, you have like the seat of Genghis Khan's, empire where he ruled. So there's really just a ton to see down there. But like I said, the infrastructure isn't great. Like getting around is difficult. So you really need quite a bit of time to see that. The same with Nepal. Like I'd like to go trek through the Himalayas, but the altitude's so great. Like it has to be a slow process, you know, for the acclimatization. Those are like kind of my big two.
And Antarctica for me. Been to six continents, and I've thrown those flying knees on 6 continents. So I've got to get the 7th one eventually.
Turkey is pretty high on my list. I'd like to see Turkey. Patagonia. Surprisingly, we haven't been to Patagonia. That's another one that I think. I mean, it takes 2 or 3 days just to get down there. So you need, you know, a couple of weeks really to have a chance to have a good opportunity to experience it. Those are kind of my big ones. Everything else is kind of like meh.
We have like Southeast Asia on the list too, but the more mountains that we climb, I think the further down it gets, the Southeast Asia gets put, because it's not mountains, it's a lot of jungle and beaches, and it's beautiful, and it's relatively inexpensive to get around and to eat and to be there. But again, whenever we're having these 2-week trekking adventures, it's like, well, we want to go into the mountains. We want to go be away from people and go into nature.
You know, it's definitely like a way for me to recharge, especially like after fight camp. You know, I kind of want to just disconnect. I don't want to be on social media. Like, you know, I just kind of want to get away from everything and just reconnect and charge my batteries. So anytime I want to, you know, we live in a big city that's busy and populated and loud. So anytime we go anywhere, it's like I want to unplug and get away from, you know, the big city. I want to be out in nature. I want to see the stars. I want to breathe fresh air. You know.
You guys are lucky that you weren't in the mountains during when the pandemic first kicked off. You guys would have came back down and been like, what the hell is going on, right? It would have been crazy.
Dude, okay. So it was just now starting. Like China was happening, Iran, Italy, South Korea was just now starting to happen. And so we were like, okay, it's going to make its way to the United States. We'll see let's keep an eye on it. We were looking in South America. There's only one spot in Brazil had it. And so Bolivia did not have it. And so by the time we got into Bolivia, good to go. By the time we leave Bolivia, a week and a half later, there was its first confirmed case, which is still like 12 hours across country. But within 36 hours of us leaving the country, Bolivia closed its borders entirely in and out. And so if you're a traveler, you can't get out. You can't get home. And they're still like that right now. They're still closed down. So had our itinerary been for 2 days later, we likely would be talking to each other from Bolivia and South Korea.
Jesus, 2 days. Yeah, there's a lot of people stuck in countries right now that, you know, didn't make it out, and financially it's ruining a lot of people financially because they have to pay for hotels, and in some countries the hotels are kicking people out, right? Like from foreigners.
I saw that yes, I saw in China that they were like starting to kick people out from Africa, saying that, you know, they're bringing in the virus.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I'm like,
it started in China. Come on, you guys are stupid.
How are they gonna bring it in?
Yeah. It's wild. So how is your guys' quarantine life right now? I see you guys are still training, and it seems like you guys can kind of go out and do things outdoors still, right?
So like all the parks and stuff, you know, like the trails are still open. You know, like the playgrounds, pavilions, like areas where people would gather to sit, like that's all like taped off. But all the trail areas and like walking paths are still open.
Yeah, so like all the parks have said, you know, maintain your social distancing, have respect for that, and everybody has. We've been to a few parks around the area, and busy. Like we went to one today, and it's a Monday afternoon when everybody should be at work, and the park is completely packed full of people. But the parks are large enough to where you don't have to get really near anybody. So other than that, like our quarantining has been Jen and I and our dogs, our number one source of entertainment, our little Toy Aussie and our Malinois, and they go at it, but they require a lot of exercise as well. So we're running them, 25 miles a week or so, and throughout the neighborhood and through parks and things like that, and then getting our own hitting mitts, cracking pads, doing kettlebell workouts, and all the stuff that comes with staying on top of our game. So ours hasn't been just too crazy as far as that goes, because at least we have each other.
And we have quite a bit of equipment at home.
Yeah.
To work out. We have our dogs, and we have to run them every day. So, we stay decently busy. I mean, it's still, it's not so bad for me. I'm kind of a homebody. But Doug's like a social butterfly.
I need people, bro.
Like, I'm going to go to the grocery store. He goes to the grocery store every day. And that's his like one outing a day. And he's like, I get to see other people and kind of sort of talk to people from a distance. And
got my mask on and everything. And I'm like, hey, how's it going, guys? Yeah. But
you become a regular.
Oh yeah. But I always am like, we don't do a lot of leftovers at the house. Never have. And I'm always cooking fresh. So me going to the grocery store on a daily basis has been what I've been doing for years and years and years. But now I'm really looking forward to it. I'm like, oh shit, okay, it's 7 o'clock. It's time to mask up and gear up and go to the grocery store and talk to the workers that have known me for years and years and years.